The Outsiders, Chapter 8, Part 1. The nurses wouldn't let us see Johnny. He was in critical condition, no visitors, but Two-Bit wouldn't take no for an answer. That was his buddy in there, and he aimed to see him. We both begged and pleaded, but we were getting nowhere until the doctor found out what was going on. Let them go in, he said to the nurse. He's been asking for them. It can't hurt now. Two-Bit didn't notice the expression in his voice. It's true, I thought numbly. He's dying. We went in, practically on tiptoe, because the quietness of the hospital scared us. Johnny was lying still, with his eyes closed, but when Two-Bit said, "Hey, Johnny, kid," he opened them and looked at us, trying to grin. "Hey, y'all." The nurse, who was pulling the shades open, smiled and said, "So he can talk after all." Two-Bit looked around. "They treating you okay, kid?" "Don't," Johnny gasped. "Don't let me put enough Don't let me put enough grease in my hair." "Don't talk," Two-Bit said, pulling up a chair. "Just listen. We'll bring you some hair grease next time. We're having the big rumble tonight." Johnny's huge black eyes widened a little, but he didn't say anything. "It's too bad you and Daly can't be in it. It's the first big rumble we've had, not counting the time we whipped Shepard's outfit." "He came by," Johnny said. "Tim Shepard?" Johnny nodded. "Came to see Daly." Tim and Dallas had always been buddies. "Did you know you got your name in the paper for being a hero?" Johnny almost grinned as he nodded. "Tough enough," he managed, and by the way his eyes were glowing, I figured Southern gentlemen had nothing on Johnny Cade. I could see that even a few words were tiring him out. He was as pale as the pillow and looked awful. Two-Bit pretended not to notice. "You want anything besides hair grease, kid?" Johnny barely nodded. "The book." He looked at me. "Can you get another one?" Two-Bit looked at me too. I hadn't told him about Gone with the Wind. "He wants a copy of Gone with the Wind so I can read it to him," I explained. "You want to run down to the drugstore and get one?" "Okay," Two-Bit said cheerfully. "Don't y'all run off." I sat down in Two-Bit's chair and tried to think of something to say. "Daly's gonna be okay," I said finally. "And Dari and me, we're okay now." I knew Johnny understood what I meant. We had always been close buddies, and those lonely days in the church strengthened our friendship. He tried to smile again, and then suddenly went white and closed his eyes tight. "Johnny," I said alarmed, "are you okay?" He nodded, keeping his eyes closed. "Yeah, it just hurts sometimes. It usually don't. I can't feel anything below the middle of my back." He lay breathing heavily for a moment. "I'm pretty bad off, ain't I, Pony?" "You'll be okay," I said with fake cheerfulness. "You gotta be. We couldn't get along without you." The truth of the last statement hit me. We couldn't get along without him. We needed Johnny as much as he needed the gang, and for the same reason. "I won't be able to walk again," Johnny started, then faltered. "Not even on crutches. Busted my back." "You'll be okay," I repeated firmly. "Don't start crying," I commanded myself. "Don't start crying. You'll scare Johnny." "You want to know something, Pony Boy? I'm scared stiff. I used to talk about killing myself." He drew a quivering breath. "I don't want to die now. It ain't long enough. 16 years ain't long enough. I wouldn't mind it so much if wasn't so much stuff I ain't done yet, and so many things I ain't seen. It's not fair. You know what? That time we were in Windricksville was the only time I've been away from our neighborhood." "You ain't gonna die," I said, trying to hold my voice down. "And don't get juiced up, because the doc won't let us see you more if you do. 16 years on the street and you can learn a lot, but all the wrong things, not the things you want to learn. 16 years on the streets and you'll see a lot, but all the wrong sights, not the sights you want to see." Johnny closed his eyes and rested quietly for a minute. "Years of living on the east side teaches you how to shut off your emotions. If you didn't, you would explode. You learn to cool it." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Johnny," she said quietly, "your mother's here to see you." Johnny opened his eyes. At first they were wide with surprise, then they darkened. "I don't want to see her," he said firmly. "She's your mother." I said, "I don't want to see her." His voice was rising. She'll probably come to tell me about all the trouble I'm causing her, and about how glad her and the old man will be when I'm dead. You tell her to leave me alone, for once." His voice broke. "For once, just leave me alone." He was struggling to sit up, but he suddenly gasped, went whiter than the pillowcase, and passed out cold. The nurse hurried me out the door. I was afraid something like this if he saw anyone. I ran into Two-Bit, who was coming in. "You can't see him now," the nurse said, so Two-Bit handed her the book. "Make sure he can see it when he comes around. She took it and closed the door behind her. Two-Bit stood and looked at the door a long time. I wish it was any one of us except Johnny, he said, and his voice was serious for once. We could get along without anyone but Johnny. Turning abruptly, he said, let's go see Dallas. As we walked out into the hall, we saw Johnny's mother. I knew her. She was a little woman with straight black hair and big black eyes like Johnny's, but that was as far as the resemblance went. Johnny Cake's eyes were fearful and sensitive. Hers were cheap and hard. As we passed her, she was saying, but I haven't a right to see him. He's my son. And all this trouble his father and I have gone to raise him, this is our reward. He'd rather see those no-count hoodlums than his own folks. She saw us and gave us a look of hatred that I almost bucked up. It was your fault, always running around in the middle of the night getting jailed and heaven knows what else. I thought she was going to cuss us out. I really did. Two-Bit's eyes got narrower, and I was afraid he was going to start something. I don't like to hear women get sworn at, even if they deserve it. No wonder he hates your guts, Two-Bit snapped. He was going to tell you off real good, but I shoved him along. I felt sick. No wonder Johnny didn't want to see her. No wonder he stayed overnight at Two-Bit's or at our house and slept in the vacant lot in good weather. I remembered my mother, beautiful and golden, like soda, and wise and firm like Dari. Oh, Lori, there's a catch. There was a catch in Two-Bit's voice as he was closer to tears than I'd ever seen him. He has to live with that. We hurried to the elevator to get to the next floor. I hoped the nurse would have enough sense not to let Johnny's mother see him. It would kill him. Dahlia was arguing with one of the nurses when we came in. He grinned at us. Man, am I glad to see you. These hospital people won't let me smoke, and I want out. We sat down grinning at each other. Dahlia was his usual mean, ornery self. He was okay. Shepard came by to see me a while ago. That's what Johnny said. What do you want? Said he saw my picture in the paper and couldn't believe it didn't have Wanted Dead or Alive under it. He mostly came to rub it in about the Rumble. Man, I hate not being in that. Only last week, Tim Shepard had cracked 3 of Dahlia's ribs, but Dahlia and Tim Shepard had always been buddies. No matter how they fought, they were two of a kind, and they know it. Dallas was grinning at me. Kid, you scared the devil out of me the other day. I thought I'd kill you. Me? I was puzzled. Why? When you jumped out of that church, I meant to hit you hard, just hard enough to knock you down and put that fire out. But when you dropped like a ton of lead, I thought I'd aimed too high and broke your neck. He thought for a minute. I'm glad I didn't, though. I'll bet, I said with a grin. I'd never liked Dahlia, but then, for the first time, I felt like he was my buddy, and all because he was glad he hadn't killed me. Dahlia looked out the window. Ugh, he said, very casual. How's the kid? We just left him, Two-Bit said, and I could tell he was debating whether to tell Dahlia the truth or not. I don't know about stuff like this, but, well, he seemed pretty bad to me. He passed out cold before we left him. Dahlia's jawline went white as he swore between clenched teeth. Two-Bit, you still got your fancy black-handed switchblade? Yeah. Give it here. Two-Bit reached into his back pocket for his prized possession. It was his jet-handled switchblade, 10 inches long, that would flash open at a mere breath. It was the reward of 2 hours of walking aimlessly around a hardware store to divert suspicion. He kept it razor sharp. As far as I knew, he had never pulled it on anyone. He used his plain pocket knife when he needed a blade, but it was this showpiece, his pride and joy. Every time he ran into a new hood, he pulled it out and showed it off with it. Dahlia knew how much that knife meant to Two-Bit. As if he needed a blade bad enough to ask for it. Well, he needed a blade. All there was to it. Two-Bit handed it over to Dahlia without a moment's hesitation. We gotta win that fight tonight, Dahlia said. His voice was hard. We gotta get even with the Socs. For Johnny. He put the switch under his pillow and lay back, staring at the ceiling. We left. We knew better than to talk Dahlia when his eyes were blazing and he was in a mood like that. We decided to catch a bus home. I just didn't feel much like walking or trying to hitch a ride. Two-Bit let me sit on the bench at the bus stop while he went to a gas station to buy some cigarettes. I was kind of sick to my stomach and sort of groggy. I was nearly asleep when I felt someone's hand on my forehead. I almost jumped out of my skin. Two-Bit was looking down at me worriedly. You feel okay? You're awful hot. I'm all right, I said. And when he looked at me as if he didn't believe me. I got a little panicky. Don't tell Dari, okay? Come on, Two-Bit, be a buddy. I'll be well by tonight. I'll take a bunch of aspirins. All right, Two-Bit said reluctantly. But Dari will kill me if you're really sick and go ahead and fight anyway. I'm okay, I said, getting a little angry. And if you keep your mouth shut, Dari won't know a thing. You know something? Two-Bit said as we were riding home on the bus. You think you could get away with murder living with your big brother and all. But Dari's stricter with you than your folks were, ain't he? Yeah, I said. But they'd raised two boys before me. Dari hasn't. You know, the only thing that keeps Dari from being a Soch is us.